A burning car, a trapped woman, and a man who risks everything to save her. A wealthy father rushes into the hospital to save his adopted daughter, only to be stunned by his wife's cold decision. But the truth unravels when a humble stranger, ignored by everyone, becomes the key to saving both the girl and her birth mother. His quiet act of kindness ends up changing all their lives forever. Rain hammered the windshield as Bradley Thompson's black SUV skidded into the drop-off lane at St. Mercy Hospital. The night was a blur of red and blue reflections, the kind that made even a wealthy man's heart pound like a trapped animal. He barely remembered handing his keys to the valet or pushing through the automatic doors. Only the sound of the doctor's voice over the phone repeating the words he still couldn't process. "Your daughter is struggling to breathe. We're doing all we can." Layla, his little girl. Bradley's shoes slapped against the polished floor as he ran down the main corridor, past families huddled in plastic chairs, past nurses wheeling carts, past the smell of antiseptic and wet coats and fear. The storm outside seemed to follow him in, clinging to his clothes, weighing on his chest. He turned the final corner toward the emergency wing, breath ragged, palms damp. And then he froze. Just ahead, through the half-open door of a consultation room, he heard his wife's voice, calm, clipped, painfully composed. Vanessa stood with her arms folded, designer coat draped over one chair, speaking to the attending physician in low tones. Bradley instinctively slowed his steps, not because he meant to listen, but because something in her tone felt wrong. Too smooth. Too distant. "Use the basic package," Vanessa said quietly. "She isn't biologically ours. There's no reason to push the premium treatments." Bradley felt the world tilt. The doctor blinked, uneasy. "Mrs. Thompson, the antiviral support is strongly recommended for a child with her symptoms. Without it, it's not necessary." Vanessa cut him off with a thin smile. "Do what you can, but nothing excessive. My husband tends to overreact." Bradley's throat closed. For a second, he couldn't breathe. He stepped forward, ready to confront her, ready to demand what she thought she was doing. But then he saw something that stopped him cold. The gurney, Layla lay on it, scarcely conscious, a thin oxygen tube taped beneath her nose. Her small hand trembled as she shifted, eyes fluttering open for a moment. And in that moment she heard everything. Her face, feverish and pale, tightened with something that tore through Bradley's chest like lightning. Hurt. Betrayal, confusion. A child trying to understand why her mother would speak of her that way. Bradley stumbled back a step, a hand coming instinctively to his mouth. Rainwater dripped from his coat onto the tile as if the storm itself had followed him, refusing to let him hide from this moment. The doctor excused himself quickly, leaving Vanessa alone with Layla. Vanessa didn't even seem to notice the girl's distress. She pulled out her phone, checked her reflection, smoothed her hair. "We'll get through this, sweetheart," she murmured. But the sweetness was hollow, the kind used for strangers in grocery store aisles. Bradley felt something fracture deep inside his ribs. How long had she been thinking this way? How long had she withheld warmth, withheld tenderness, while he'd been too busy managing projects and renovations to see it? A nurse brushed past him with a chart. "Sir, are you Layla's father? The doctors need to speak with you." He nodded stiffly, the words catching on something heavy lodged in his throat. His legs felt strange as he followed her, like he was walking through water. But his eyes kept drifting back toward the room where Layla lay, where Vanessa continued scrolling through her phone as though nothing in the world had changed. He didn't know yet what had driven her to say those things, or why she would make such a choice in a moment when their daughter needed them most. But the question pulsed inside him, louder than the storm, louder than the alarms echoing down the hall. Why would Vanessa limit the care of a child she'd helped raise? And deep down, a colder fear began to form. What else had she been hiding? The nurse opened a door at the end of the hall. "Mr. Thompson, this way." Bradley stepped in, but his thoughts stayed behind, anchored to the faint sound of Layla's breathing and the memory of her eyes when she realized what her mother had said. Nothing would ever be the same after tonight. The door clicked shut behind him, muffling the storm and the voices in the hallway. A physician with tired eyes and rain-speckled glasses gestured for him to sit, spreading several charts across the small metal table. Bradley tried to listen, tried to focus on the words: oxygen saturation, antiviral infusions, elevated inflammation markers, but they floated past him in a blur. Every so often, Layla's face resurfaced in his mind, fragile and burning with fever, and he felt helpless in a way he had never known before. Money could solve many things, but not terror in a child's eyes. "Mr. Thompson," the doctor said gently, "your daughter is stable for the moment. We'll monitor her closely. The next 12 hours matter most." Bradley nodded, swallowing hard. "Do whatever you have to," he said. "Whatever it costs." The doctor hesitated. "Your wife requested me—" "Ignore that," Bradley snapped, sharper than intended. "Use the best treatment available. She's my daughter." The doctor simply nodded, relief flickering in his expression, and stepped out to update the nurses. Bradley remained seated for a long moment, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. His mind drifted to memories he hadn't called up in years. Layla at 5 jumping into his lap with a book. Layla running through the sprinklers in the backyard, curls bouncing. Layla clinging to his leg on her first day of school. She had never been anything other than his daughter. Biology had nothing to do with it. He wiped a hand over his face, drew a long breath, and stood. The hallway outside was quieter now, though the storm still pressed against the windows like a living thing. As he walked back toward Layla's room, a nurse brushed past him carrying a tray. "Poor kid," she murmured to another nurse. "She keeps asking for someone named Jordan." Bradley slowed. The name meant nothing to him. He approached the room and paused in the doorway. Layla was asleep, curled slightly on her side. Vanessa sat stiffly in a chair nearby, her arms crossed, her gaze glued to her phone. Her expression didn't match the ache twisting inside Bradley's chest. When she finally sensed him, she looked up. "The doctor spoke to you?" she asked, voice crisp. "Yes," he replied, "and I overrode your decision." Her jaw tightened. "Bradley, we have to be realistic. The premium treatment costs—" "Don't," he warned quietly. "Not now." Vanessa scoffed, returning her attention to her screen. The storm outside cracked loudly, lightning flashing across the blinds. For the first time, Bradley wondered what kind of wall had grown between him and the woman he married. He stepped closer to the bed and brushed a strand of hair from Layla's forehead. She stirred, eyelids fluttering. "Daddy?" "I'm here," he whispered, throat thick. "You're safe. I'm right here." Her small fingers gripped his wrist feebly. "Don't let her." Layla drifted off before finishing the sentence. But Bradley knew exactly what she meant. He kissed her forehead, then quietly left the room, unable to breathe under Vanessa's cold stare. Downstairs, the automatic doors slid open for a man hurrying inside. Bradley had no reason to notice him. An exhausted delivery worker with a soaked jacket, shoes squeaking, clutching a nearly empty tote bag. But something about the man's posture caught his attention. A slight limp, the way he winced as he flexed his left hand, as though burned. The man paused near the vending machines, rubbing his palm, then started toward the information desk. Bradley thought nothing of it, until he heard the security guard's voice rise. "Sir, I told you earlier, you can't be wandering around the hospital. Deliveries only." The man lifted both hands in surrender. "I'm not wandering. I'm just trying to find something I left earlier. A coat. Dark blue. Check lost and found tomorrow. You need to leave." The guard's tone hardened in a way Bradley had heard before, particularly toward men who looked like this one. Black, tired, wearing the marks of working-class struggle. "I'm not causing trouble," the man said softly. Someone in there needed help. I didn't want to walk away." Something tugged at Bradley. A familiar instinct. The one he'd learned to ignore at board meetings and charity galas. He took a step toward the commotion, but before he reached them, the man backed off, nodding. "All right, I'll go." He turned toward the exit, shoulders slumped, rain already blowing in through the doorway as he stepped out. Bradley stood there, watching him disappear into the storm. The name he'd overheard echoed in his mind. Jordan. Who was he? And why was Layla asking for him? He headed back upstairs to ask the nurses, but before reaching the elevator, his phone buzzed. It was the doctor again. "Mr. Thompson, we need to discuss something about the woman from the car accident, the one brought in earlier." "I'm with my daughter," Bradley replied, confused. "Why are you calling me?" There was a pause on the line, a brief crackle of hesitation. "Because we believe there may be a connection between her and your family." Bradley felt the storm tighten its grip around him once more. "What kind of connection?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. The doctor exhaled slowly, as though choosing his words with care. "It's too early to be certain, but you'll want to hear this in person." Bradley closed his eyes, heart pounding again. Tonight the questions were multiplying faster than the answers, and every one of them seemed to lead back to that man walking alone into the rain. Bradley stood still at the end of the hallway, his phone still warm in his hand long after the doctor ended the call. For a second, he felt suspended between two storms, the one outside and the one unraveling inside his family. Layla was sick, Vanessa was hiding things, and a stranger named Jordan seemed woven into all of it in ways that didn't make sense yet. But the night had one more story to tell before Bradley would understand how everything connected. Across town, rain slapped against the cracked pavement near the loading dock of a 24-hour supermarket. Jordan Miles stood beneath the awning, drenched despite his best efforts, waiting for the next order to come through his phone. His left hand still throbbed from the burn he was pretending didn't exist, bandage soaked from the downpour. The storm had no mercy tonight. Every gust cut across his face like cold sand. He pulled his thin jacket tighter around himself, even though it did little to keep the wind out. He should have been home with Nia by now. She'd be asleep in the tiny room they shared, her little nightlight shaped like a butterfly, casting yellow stars on the wall. But the rent notice taped to their door this morning kept replaying in his head. 7 days. If he didn't catch enough shifts, they'd lose even the shabby roof they had. So he pushed through the pain, through the exhaustion, through the humiliation he faced earlier at the hospital. He'd learned long ago that the world didn't wait for men like him to rest. Jordan's phone buzzed with a new order. He exhaled, grabbed his delivery bag, and headed toward his old sedan parked under a flickering street lamp. The wipers screeched as he pulled onto the main road, visibility barely a few feet ahead. Atlanta storms were unpredictable, turning familiar streets into shadowy rivers. He had just passed the entrance to St. Mercy when the blinding flash hit. A pair of headlights swerved across the slick pavement, fishtailing wildly as the SUV hydroplaned. Jordan's breath caught. He instinctively hit the brakes as the vehicle slammed into a streetlight pole with a sickening crunch, metal folding in on itself. Sparks shot across the hood. Flames licked upward in seconds, fueled by whatever was leaking beneath the chassis. "God, no, no!" Jordan threw his car into park, stumbled into the rain, his shoes skidding across the soaked asphalt. A delivery driver wasn't supposed to interfere. That's what corporate guides said. But Jordan wasn't built to watch someone die. Not after what he lived through as a kid. Not after what happened to his sister. He ran. The closer he got, the hotter the air grew despite the storm. Through the shattered side window, he saw a woman slumped over the steering wheel, unmoving. Her hair matted with rain and blood, face half obscured by the deployed airbag. For a split second, fear whispered to him, "Walk away, let someone else handle it." But Jordan's heart didn't work that way. He pulled the driver's side handle. Jammed. Rain soaked through his collar as he braced his shoulder against the door. Nothing. Flames crackled beneath the car, popping like firecrackers. Someone across the street shouted, "Leave it, man! It's gonna blow!" Another lifted a phone, recording. Jordan grabbed a broken parking sign lying nearby and swung it at the window. Once, twice. On the third hit, the glass shattered inward. Heat burned his face. He reached through, ignoring the shards slicing his arm, and unlatched the door from inside. The metal groaned open. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" he murmured as he unbuckled her. No response. Her pulse fluttered beneath his fingers. Faint, but present. He hooked his arms under hers and pulled. The woman was heavier than she looked, dead weight soaking with rainwater, her breath shallow. Jordan staggered backward, boots slipping, but he tightened his grip and forced himself upright. Every muscle shook as he dragged her across the pavement, dozens of feet from the burning vehicle. They were barely 20 yards away when the SUV went up in a blast of orange light. The shockwave knocked Jordan forward, shielding the woman's body with his own. Debris clattered around them like hail. The world rang in his ears, the ground trembling beneath him. When he finally lifted his head, the entire front of the car was engulfed. He lay there for a moment, chest heaving, rain pouring from his eyebrows onto the woman's face. "You're okay," he whispered, though he had no idea if she could hear him. "You're safe now. You hold on, all right? Just hold on." A crowd gathered at a distance, none daring to come closer until sirens split the air. Paramedics stormed past Jordan to lift the unconscious woman onto a stretcher. A firefighter gently pushed him back, but not before noticing the burns blistering across his left hand. "Sir, you need treatment too." "I'm fine," Jordan muttered. He wasn't, but he couldn't afford another bill. "Just take care of her." As the ambulance sped away, Jordan stood alone in the rain, hand throbbing, clothes soaked, breath shaky. The fire truck lights reflected off the puddles around him, turning everything into streaks of red. He didn't even know her name. But tomorrow, he'd find out that this woman wasn't just another stranger on a stormy road. She was the missing piece of a story he had unknowingly walked straight into. The story of a sick girl in a hospital bed. A girl named Layla. And as Jordan limped back toward his car, the storm softened slightly. though the night still held its secrets. He winced as he gripped the steering wheel, exhaustion weighing him down. But underneath it all, something else echoed in his mind. Layla whispering for someone named Jordan, a child he'd never met. Fate, it seemed, had already begun tying their lives together. Outside, thunder rolled like distant drums as Bradley stepped into the dim glow of the pediatric wing. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, their bluish tint giving everything a washed-out, almost fragile look. He paused before entering Layla's room, breathing in slowly, bracing himself for whatever expression he might find on her face. But when he opened the door, she was asleep again, curled under the thin hospital blanket, like a small bundle of hope fighting against a world too big for her. Vanessa was gone. Only the faint perfume she wore lingered, mixed with the antiseptic smell of the room. Too sweet, too sharp, a scent that didn't belong to a place meant for healing. Bradley eased into the chair beside Layla and watched her breathe, each rise and fall of her chest, tightening something inside him. He wished he could climb into her dreams and pull away whatever pain or fear was haunting her. But instead, he just sat there, a silent guardian, wondering how everything had gotten this twisted. Downstairs, the automatic doors swooshed open again. A nurse pushed a cart toward the elevator, and right beside the reception desk, soaking wet and shivering, Jordan Miles stood with his hands jammed into his pockets, trying to gather the courage to speak. He'd come back when the firefighters told him the ambulance brought the woman to this hospital. That meant he'd done his part. He could leave. He should leave. But Layla's tiny voice, just a whisper through the crack of that earlier door, had lodged itself in his mind like a thorn he couldn't pull free. Someone needed him, someone scared and small and sick. And though his shirt was still damp and his arm still stung from the broken glass, Jordan hadn't felt needed in a very long time. He approached the desk. "Excuse me, I left my coat earlier, and I was hoping to check on someone." The security guard from before appeared like a shadow. "Sir, you again?" Jordan steadied himself, swallowing the sting of shame. "I'm not trying to make trouble. Just a coat. And I wanted to be sure the woman I brought in is okay." Before the guard could respond, a soft voice interrupted. "Jordan." He turned. Fiona, Layla's live-in caregiver, stood there holding a paper cup of coffee, her eyes widening with surprised relief. "Jordan Miles, you're the one from the accident. I didn't think you'd stay." "I just needed to know she's safe," Jordan said quietly. "She is. And thank you. Truly." Fiona stepped closer, lowering her voice. "But I think there's someone else here who really needs you tonight." Jordan frowned. "Who?" "Layla." The air shifted around him. "She keeps asking for you," Fiona continued. "Ever since she heard you talking to her earlier." Jordan blinked. "I wasn't doing anything special, just trying to comfort her." "It mattered," Fiona said simply. "She hasn't responded like that to anyone, not even her parents." Jordan hesitated. He felt the weight of his shoes, the ache in his burned hand, the exhaustion pulling at every part of him. "Are you sure it's okay?" "More than okay." Fiona gave a small, grateful smile. "Come with me." Upstairs, Bradley lifted his head as the door opened. At first, he expected a nurse, or maybe Vanessa returning with that cold look she'd perfected over the years. Instead, he saw Fiona, and behind her, the man from the lobby, the same man he'd seen walking into the rain. "Mr. Thompson," Fiona whispered. "This is Jordan Miles. He's the one Layla keeps asking for." Jordan froze at the threshold, unsure if he was welcome. Bradley studied him in silence. The soaked jacket, the tired eyes, the awkward humility in the way he held himself. He didn't look like anyone who belonged in the world Vanessa liked to decorate herself with. But something in Jordan's face told a different story. A story of surviving things quietly, of carrying more weight than anyone noticed. Before Bradley could respond, Layla stirred. Her eyelashes fluttered, and she opened her eyes just enough to see the shape in the doorway. "Dan?" she whispered weakly. Jordan stepped forward without thinking, the instinct rising from somewhere deeper than reason. "Hey, little one. I'm here." Layla reached out a trembling hand, and Jordan stopped beside the bed, letting her fingers curl around his. She sighed softly, eyes drifting closed again. Not from fear this time, but relief. Bradley watched the scene unfold with a lump in his throat. His daughter hadn't shown that kind of ease with anyone since she got sick. Not with nurses, not with him, and certainly not with Vanessa. "What did you say to her?" he asked quietly. Jordan shook his head. "Just that she wasn't alone." A simple sentence. But it hit Bradley like a truth he'd forgotten how to speak. He stepped aside, letting Jordan have the chair. Fiona slipped out to give them space. Rain continued tapping on the windows, softer now, like the storm itself was listening. Bradley sank onto the windowsill, feeling the tension between the three of them. One man desperate to protect his daughter, one stranger unsure why he was needed, and one child clinging to a lifeline she didn't fully understand yet. But there was something else in the room, too. Something unspoken. Layla mumbled again, barely audible. Jordan leaned closer, brushing her knuckles gently. "You're safe, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere." Bradley exhaled. Somewhere inside him, a thread loosened, not in surrender, but in realization. Who was this man? Why did Layla trust him so easily? And what kind of connection was forming right in front of him? In the crisis, he still didn't understand. He didn't have answers. Not yet. But as he watched Jordan sit beside his daughter, calm and steady despite the storm inside and outside the hospital, Bradley knew one thing. This man didn't stumble into their lives by accident. Something bigger was pulling them all together. And the truth waiting on the other side of the night was only just beginning to reveal itself. The storm outside had quieted into a steady drizzle, the kind that softened streetlights and turned the hospital windows into slow-moving mirrors. Inside Layla's room, however, the air felt charged, alive with tension, fragile comfort, and unspoken questions. Jordan stayed seated beside Layla's bed, his posture careful, as though afraid a sudden movement might wake her or break whatever fragile peace had settled over the room. His damp jacket draped over the chairback, drops of storm water slowly gathering into a small puddle on the linoleum floor. Every few minutes, he glanced at the girl's sleeping face, as if checking whether she truly needed him, or if he had mistaken her, whispered plea for something else. Bradley stood by the window, arms crossed, watching Jordan from a distance. He didn't know what to make of the man yet. A stranger, a delivery driver from the looks of him, shouldn't have meant anything to his daughter. And yet, Layla had reached for Jordan the way she hadn't reached for anyone. Not even him. Not even when she was younger and scared of thunderstorms. That alone stirred something uneasy inside his chest. The door suddenly swung open. Vanessa stepped in like a gust of cold air, heels clicking sharply against the tile. Her perfectly styled hair remained untouched by the weather. Her coat wrapped tight around her narrow frame. Her eyes swept across the room and instantly found Jordan. They narrowed. "What is he doing here?" she demanded. Layla stirred at the sound of her mother's voice, her small fingers tightening around Jordan's hand even in sleep. Jordan froze, unsure if he should pull away. Bradley stepped forward. "Vanessa, keep your voice down. She's resting." Vanessa ignored him, moving closer like she owned every inch of air in the room. "I asked a question," she said, her chin lifting. "Why is this man sitting next to our daughter as if he belongs here?" Jordan rose slowly, not wanting to escalate anything. "Ma'am, You were just leaving," Vanessa snapped. "That's what you were doing. Security was already supposed to escort you out earlier. Why are you still in this hospital?" Her tone drew a nurse in from the corridor, peeking in with concern. Bradley raised a hand, signaling that he would handle it. "Vanessa, stop," he said. "Layla asked for him." "She did?" Vanessa let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "She's feverish, Bradley. Children say all kinds of things when they're delirious." "Even delirious. She didn't ask for you," he murmured before he could stop himself. Her head snapped toward him, eyes sharp as broken glass. "What did you say?" But Bradley didn't repeat it. Instead, he turned toward Jordan. "Thank you for sitting with her, really. You helped calm her down." Jordan nodded awkwardly and took a step back. "I didn't mean to intrude. I heard her crying earlier." "You heard her crying," Vanessa repeated, incredulous. "And you thought that made it your place? You don't know this child. You don't know us." Her words hit with the force of something deeper than irritation, something built from years of walls and distance and carefully curated appearances. She looked at Jordan the way she might look at a stain on her white carpet. Jordan's shoulders lowered, not in defeat, but in something more familiar: acceptance. He'd lived his whole life being spoken to like this by people who believed their money gave them the right to measure someone's worth. "I'll go," he said simply. "I didn't mean any harm." Layla whimpered in her sleep, and her fingers loosened from his hand only because she was slipping deeper into rest, not because she wanted him gone. Vanessa noticed and scoffed. "See? She doesn't need you. She needs real medical care. Something you wouldn't understand." "Vanessa!" Bradley snapped, louder this time. "He pulled her out of a panic attack earlier. The nurses told me." Vanessa blinked. "And I'm supposed to thank him for that? Someone off the street?" Jordan swallowed, breathing slow and steady. "Ma'am, I didn't come here for thanks." "Clearly," she muttered. "You came here for attention." That did it. The nurse stepped fully into the room, placing herself between them. "Mrs. Thompson, please lower your voice. And Mr. Miles, thank you for your assistance earlier. The child responded well to your presence." Vanessa whipped toward the nurse. "Why is everyone acting like this makes sense? He shouldn't be near her. Period." Bradley exhaled through clenched teeth. "Enough!" But the tension had already escalated too far. Vanessa's voice rose, shrill and sharp. "If the hospital won't remove him, I will file a complaint myself. This is inappropriate." The nurse stiffened. Bradley turned away, furious and helpless. And Jordan. Jordan felt the old familiar sting of being dismissed, minimized, pushed aside because of who he was, or rather, who people assumed he was. He picked up his jacket slowly. "I'll leave. No trouble." Before he stepped out, he looked at Layla one last time, Her breathing was soft, steady. He spoke barely above a whisper. "Get better, sweetheart." As he walked toward the doorway, Bradley's voice followed him, lower, more sincere. "Jordan, thank you." Jordan nodded once, then disappeared into the hallway. Vanessa crossed her arms triumphantly, as if she'd solved a problem rather than created one. "Good, finally." Bradley stared at her, and for the first time in their marriage, he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him. Not the coldness, not the disdain, not the way she seemed almost bothered by Layla's suffering instead of worried about it. "What happened to you, Vanessa?" he whispered. "When did your heart get this small?" Her face twisted. "Don't start. You always side with strays, never with the people who actually belong in your life." He didn't answer. He just walked past her, toward the hallway where Jordan had gone, hoping to catch him before he left the building completely. But when Bradley reached the lobby, Jordan was already stepping into the rain again, jacket pulled tight, head bowed. The automatic doors closed behind him with a hiss. Bradley didn't follow, not yet. Something told him he needed to understand more first. Upstairs, Layla whimpered again, calling faintly for someone who was no longer beside her. "Jordan. Jordan." And downstairs, Bradley felt the first deep crack of doubt about the woman he married. A crack that would soon split open everything he thought he knew about his own home. He stood at the foot of the stairs for a long moment, hands in his pockets, the hospital lobby humming quietly around him. The storm had weakened into a mist, leaving streaks across the large glass windows. People came and went, orderlies pushing carts, nurses with clipboards, a janitor mopping up muddy footprints. But everything sounded distant, muffled, like Bradley was underwater. He had a meeting scheduled with the doctor, the one who hinted at a strange connection between the woman from the accident and his own family. But his mind kept drifting back to Layla whispering Jordan's name, and Vanessa's voice slicing through the air like ice. It never used to be like this. Or maybe he had never really looked closely enough. Upstairs, a soft chime announced the arrival of an elevator. Bradley stepped inside, alone, watching the floor numbers rise. Each ding felt heavier than the last. When the doors opened on the third floor, the pediatric wing was quieter than before. Lights dimmed. Night shift nurses spoke in hushed voices. Machines beeped steadily from behind partially closed doors. He found the doctor waiting near the charting station. "Mr. Thompson," the doctor said, motioning him into a nearby counseling room. "Thank you for coming." Bradley sat. The room smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink. He steeled himself. "This is regarding the woman brought in after the car accident," the doctor continued. "The one your daughter's caregiver mentioned earlier." "The one Jordan rescued," Bradley murmured. The doctor nodded. "Yes. She's in stable but fragile condition. We ran her prints through the system hoping to contact family. There was a match." Bradley stiffened. "A match to who?" The doctor hesitated, just long enough to twist something in Bradley's gut. "We matched her to adoption records," he said softly. "To an adoption from 12 years ago." Bradley blinked. The words didn't sink in at first. Adoption records. 12 years ago. His mind tried to make sense of it, but the doctor's expression did it for him. "No," Bradley whispered. "No. That can't be right." "I'm afraid it is," the doctor said gently. "The woman from the accident. Her name is Mariah Carter. According to the original documents she signed before entering treatment years ago, she is the biological mother of your daughter. The room tilted. Bradley gripped the edge of his chair, knuckles pale. Mariah. He had heard the name once, a decade ago, a ghost in Layla's paperwork that Vanessa said was irrelevant. She'd insisted the birth mother was overseas, unreachable, that there was nothing more to know. But she wasn't gone. She wasn't unreachable. She was here, alive, fighting for breath just a few rooms away. And Jordan, of all people, a stranger, was the one who saved her life. Bradley pushed a hand through his hair. She came back for Layla? We don't know yet, the doctor replied. But she had something with her. He reached into a file and handed Bradley a small plastic bag. This was found in her coat pocket. Inside was a photo, wrinkled, water-stained, but still clear enough. Layla at 5 years old, holding a stuffed rabbit, smiling at someone just outside the frame. On the back, smudged but legible, "My baby girl. I will find you." Bradley shut his eyes. His pulse throbbed in his temples. "Does my wife know?" he asked quietly. "No," the doctor answered. "We haven't spoken to her yet. We thought it best to inform the legal guardian first." Legal guardian. The words tasted bitter, suddenly too small to describe what Layla meant to him. He needed air. Bradley rose abruptly. "I need a moment." He left the counseling room and stepped into the hallway, chest tight. He walked in no particular direction until he reached a window overlooking the parking lot. Rain speckled the glass. Street lamps glowed through the haze. His reflection stared back at him. Creased forehead, damp eyes, a man realizing how many truths had been hidden right beneath his feet. Behind him, footsteps approached. "Mr. Thompson?" It was Fiona, her face drawn with worry. "How did the meeting go? Is everything okay?" He shook his head slowly. "No, not even close." Before she could ask more, Layla's cry echoed down the hall, thin, frightened, barely rising above the hum of machines. "Jordan," she whimpered. "Where's Jordan?" Fiona hurried toward the room. Bradley followed, feeling the weight of every secret piling on his shoulders. Inside, Layla was clutching her blanket with trembling hands, eyes glassy with fever. A nurse tried to soothe her, but she kept shaking her head. "I want Jordan," she whispered. "He makes it stop hurting." Bradley stepped forward. "Sweetheart, he's—" "Please," she begged, tears forming. "Don't let him go." The ache in Bradley's chest deepened. He didn't understand the connection between them, or why Jordan had slipped into Layla's heart so fast. But she needed comfort, and he would give her anything that helped her heal. He pulled out his phone, hesitating only a second. He didn't know Jordan's last name. He didn't know his number. He didn't know anything about him. But he knew where he'd last seen him. Walking into the rain, shoulders heavy, alone. "Fiona," he murmured. "Stay with her. I'll be right back." He jogged toward the elevator. As the doors closed, his reflection flickered again. This time harder, older, worn by a truth he wasn't ready to face. Downstairs, when the elevator doors slid open, a nurse rushed toward him. "Mr. Thompson, they're calling for you in the ER." He froze. "Why?" "It's the woman from the accident," she said breathlessly. "She woke up, and she's asking the same exact question your daughter did." Bradley felt the ground shift beneath him. "What question?" he asked. The nurse swallowed. "She's asking, Where Jordan is." The words hung in the air like a struck bell, vibrating through Bradley's chest long after the nurse hurried away. The storm outside had quieted, but inside him, a different storm, colder, deeper, had begun to rise. Somehow, in the span of a single night, two people who had never met before were calling out for the same man. Jordan. A quiet delivery driver with kind eyes and tired shoulders. A man who'd been shoved aside, dismissed, pushed out of the building as though he didn't belong within its walls. Yet both Layla and the mysterious woman from the accident seemed to believe he did. Bradley's shoes echoed sharply against the tile as he entered the ER corridor. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Behind curtains, machines beeped, nurses whispered, and somewhere far off, an intercom announced a code he barely registered. A doctor stepped out from a room ahead, adjusting his glasses. "Mr. Thompson, she's awake, weak, medicated, but coherent." Bradley steadied himself. "And she's asking for Jordan?" The doctor nodded. "Repeatedly. She seems agitated when we tell her we don't know where he is." Does she know who I am?" Bradley asked. "She recognized your name," the doctor said carefully, "but she didn't want to speak until she saw him." Bradley swallowed hard. Not anger, fear. Because every instinct in him said this woman knew something he didn't. Something Vanessa had buried deep. When he stepped into the room, the beeping grew louder, steadier. The woman lay pale beneath thin sheets, bruise shadowing her cheekbone, hair matted from rain and impact. But her eyes, dark, sharp with desperation, fixed on him immediately. "You're Bradley," she rasped. "Yes," he said quietly, stepping closer. "I'm Bradley Thompson." She inhaled shakily. "Then where is he? Where's Jordan?" He pulled a chair beside her bed, confused and rattled. "He left earlier. He's not family. He's just someone who happened to help." Her fingers curled weakly against the sheets, a tremor running through her voice. "No, he was there. He dragged me out. I remember his hands. I remember warmth. Someone cared." Bradley exhaled slowly. "I'm grateful he helped you. Truly. But how do you know him?" Her gaze drifted upward, unfocused. "I heard him. When they lifted me, he said, 'Hang on, ma'am. I got you.' No one said that to me in years." Her eyes locked on him again. "He's good. You need good people around that little girl." Bradley's stomach twisted. "You know about my daughter?" A tired smile formed, sad, fragile. "I know more than you think. I didn't come here to hurt anyone." Bradley leaned closer, heart pounding. "Then tell me the truth." But before she could answer, her monitors spiked. A nurse rushed in. "Sir, we need a moment. She's still unstable." He stepped back as they worked to calm her, but her hand shot out, grabbing his sleeve with surprising strength. "Find him," she whispered. "Don't let anyone push him away. He's the reason I'm alive. And he's the reason," she winced, chest rising in uneven breaths. "The reason she'll know the truth." "Whose truth?" Bradley pressed, but she was fading, pulled under by exhaustion and medication. Her grip loosened, and the nurse gently guided her hand back to the bed. "Mr. Thompson," the nurse said softly, "she needs rest. You can come back in the morning." Bradley nodded, backing out into the hallway, but something inside him had already shifted. Jordan wasn't just a coincidence. He was a hinge, one the truth seemed determined to swing open. Bradley moved quickly through the halls, his mind replaying Layla's weak voice asking for Jordan, and this woman's trembling insistence that he mattered. He needed answers. Not later. Now. But when he entered Layla's room again, he found the very source of his unraveling standing rigidly in the center of it. Vanessa. Her back was to him, but her voice, sharp enough to cut glass, filled the room. I don't want him here, Layla. I don't care what you think he did. Strangers don't belong at your bedside. And neither does that woman they pulled from the rain. She has no place in our lives. Layla was curled up against her pillows, eyes wet, face pale. Why are you being like this? She whispered. She didn't do anything. She? Vanessa snapped. She abandoned you, and now you're too sick to see what's happening. Bradley froze in the doorway. Abandoned. Vanessa had said that word with venom. Too much venom for someone who supposedly knew nothing about the woman until tonight. Layla's voice cracked. Daddy doesn't talk to me like that. Vanessa stiffened. Well, I'm not your father. The room went cold. Layla shrank back, her breathing shallow and fast. A nurse moved toward her, but Vanessa's glare stopped her. Bradley stepped forward. That's enough. Vanessa whirled around, startled. Bradley, this is not what it looks like. No, he said quietly. Because it looks like you're terrorizing a child who's already fighting for her life. She needs to understand what she needs is compassion. Layla whimpered, and Jordan's name slipped out again, soft as a prayer. Vanessa's lip curled. Unbelievable. She's clinging to some delivery driver now? What next? Are we supposed to adopt him too? Bradley stared at her, truly stared, seeing not a wife but a stranger with ice in her voice and fear in her eyes. Why do you hate him so much? He saved that woman's life. He helped our daughter. Why does that threaten you? Vanessa said nothing, because the truth was pressing against her ribs, begging to break free. But instead she turned away and snapped, Get him out of this hospital, both of them. I won't have them anywhere near our family. Bradley felt something inside him break. Vanessa, he said softly, I think it's time you tell me what you've been hiding. She stiffened, and for the first time since he'd known her, she looked afraid. Before she could answer, the door swung open. A nurse rushed in. Mr. Thompson, the woman from the ER is awake again. She's asking for you, and she said she remembers something important. Bradley didn't look at Vanessa. He didn't need to, because he already knew. Whatever Mariah was about to reveal would change everything, and Vanessa knew it too. Bradley didn't wait for Vanessa's excuses, arguments, or half-truths. He turned and followed the nurse down the hallway, his footsteps quickening with each breath. The walls felt narrower tonight, the lights harsher, the sterile scent pressing against his skin like cold fingers. Every instinct in him was bracing for a truth he wasn't sure he wanted, but absolutely needed. The door to Mariah's room was partially open. Her monitor beeped steadily now, a rhythm of fragile survival. When Bradley stepped inside, she was awake, propped slightly against her pillows. Her face still bruised, but her eyes clearer than before. She looked up, breathing shallow but controlled. You came. He nodded, pulling a chair close. They said you remembered something. Mariah swallowed, wincing. I remember everything. Lightning flashed through the window, a faint echo of the storm that had passed, but still enough to illuminate the anguish in her eyes. Mr. Thompson, I didn't know how to find you, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't know if you even knew she existed. Bradley leaned forward. Knew who? She gave a weak but determined look. Layla, my daughter. The air left his lungs. He tried to steady himself, tried to keep his voice level. Why now? Why tonight? Why were you at that road near the hospital? She pressed one hand to her forehead. Because I've spent the last year saving every dollar from cleaning jobs to travel back to this city. I was in rehab, then counseling, then working. I promised myself I wouldn't come back until I could be stable for her. Her voice cracked. I didn't give her up because I didn't love her. I gave her up because I wanted her to have a chance I couldn't give. Drugs, shelters, no steady home. I thought she'd be safer with someone who could take care of her. But I never meant to disappear forever. Bradley stared at her, feeling equal parts sorrow and confusion. Then why didn't we know any of this? Why didn't the agency tell us? Mariah closed her eyes slowly. Because someone didn't want you to know. The words hung in the dim room like smoke. Bradley felt his pulse quicken. Who? Mariah looked at him, really looked, and he saw the truth form before she even spoke it. Your wife, she whispered, Vanessa. His chair scraped sharply as he stood. That's not possible. She didn't even meet you. Mariah shook her head. Not directly, but she talked to my caseworker. They told me when I signed the relinquishment papers that I would receive updates, photos, letters maybe, even if anonymously. She inhaled sharply, pain rippling down her side. But nothing came. Months passed, then a year, and when I finally got clean enough to try contacting the agency again, they said the adoptive mother insisted no contact would be allowed, that she requested my history sealed. Bradley's entire body went still. Vanessa? Mariah nodded weakly. I didn't know why. Maybe she thought I'd interfere. Maybe she thought Layla belonged only to her. I don't know. I only know. I never signed away my right to love her. Tears slipped down her temples, mixing with bruised skin. Bradley gripped the foot of the bed, fighting to keep his voice steady. Did you come tonight to try and meet her? Yes, she whispered. I wanted to see her from a distance, just to know she was okay. She hesitated. But I wasn't alone. Bradley's heart stuttered. What do you mean? Mariah looked toward the door, as if expecting someone to walk in. There was a man in a black sedan, she said quietly. He was following me. I saw him outside the bus station, then at the hospital entrance. I thought I was imagining it, but when I crossed the street, the car sped up. Fear crept into her voice. I didn't step into traffic. He forced me off the road. That crash wasn't an accident. Bradley's skin prickled. Are you saying someone tried to hurt you? Mariah nodded. Or stop me. Silence filled the room, thick, suffocating. But someone saved me, she whispered. A man I never met. A man who risked everything. Jordan, Bradley breathed. Mariah smiled faintly. Yes. He held me, told me I wasn't alone, told me I mattered. No one had said that to me in years. Her eyes shone with something fragile and aching. He saved my life before I even knew his name, and he carried me out of that fire like it didn't matter what he lost doing it. Bradley stiffened. Lost? What did he lose? Mariah's expression darkened. He said something, barely audible. Something about missing rent. About losing where he lived. He said it as if he was used to losing things. Bradley felt the weight of her words sink deep. A man fighting for scraps while saving everyone else. A man who hadn't even hesitated to save Layla twice without knowing who she was. Mariah's voice softened. Your daughter, when I saw her today, even briefly, she looks like she's loved. Really loved. And that's all I ever wanted. But she's hurting, and someone's keeping secrets from her. Bradley clenched his jaw. Vanessa's face flashed in his mind. Perfect makeup, cold eyes, sharp tone, standing over Layla like a shadow. He looked down at Mariah. Rest now. You're safe here. She reached for his hand. He let her take it. Find him, she whispered. Find Jordan. He deserves to know he saved more than one life tonight. Bradley nodded, voice thick. I will. When he stepped out into the hallway, Vanessa was pacing near the elevators. Her eyes widened when she saw him, but not with relief, more like dread. What did she say? Vanessa demanded, stepping forward. Bradley, she's unstable. You can't believe. But Bradley held up a hand, firm and trembling. No more lies, he said. Not tonight. Vanessa swallowed hard. I don't know what you think she told you. Then you should hope, he said, voice low and dangerous, that Jordan tells me the same thing when I find him. Because for the first time, Bradley believed that the truth, the whole, painful truth, was hiding with the man no one in this building had bothered to look twice at, except the two people whose lives he'd saved. And Bradley intended to find him before the night ended. The hospital doors slid open with a sigh as Bradley stepped into the misty night. The rain had thinned into a cold drizzle, soft enough that it clung to his skin like dew, but heavy enough to blur the streetlights into halos. He scanned the sidewalk, the bus stop, the empty stretch of asphalt that led toward the service road. No sign of Jordan. He pulled out his phone, the screen glowing harshly in the dark. No texts, no calls, no leads. He didn't even have the man's last name, only the image of Jordan walking alone into the rain. Shoulders heavy, steps slow, like someone accustomed to disappearing before anyone noticed he was gone. A thought hit him, sudden and sharp. The bus route. Bradley jogged toward the stop, dress shoes splashing through shallow puddles. A bus schedule was taped crookedly to the shelter wall, the ink smudged from rain. Routes marked in fading blue ink. Connections at South Ridge. Final stop at Maple Terrace, a low-income housing complex known mostly for late rent notices and eviction postings that never stayed on the bulletin board for long. He imagined Jordan trudging up cracked steps, soaked jacket clinging to him, the weight of the world on his back. He didn't belong walking streets like that alone. Not tonight. Not after everything. Bradley raised a hand, waving frantically as headlights approached. A cab slowed, then stopped. Where to? The driver asked. Maple Terrace Apartments, Bradley said, breathless. Fast as you can. As the cab peeled away from the hospital curb, he felt the city shifting around him. The tall glass buildings fading into older brick, newer streetlights giving way to flickering yellow ones, clean sidewalks dissolving into cracked concrete. It was like entering another world, one Jordan navigated daily, while Bradley had only ever driven past it, with tinted windows rolled up. He felt shame press hard into his ribs. Why had it taken a stranger saving his daughter for him to look beyond his own gates? Maple Terrace appeared at the end of a long stretch of broken road, its sign hanging crookedly. Laundry lines fluttered between balconies. A group of teenagers huddled near the stairwell, hoodies pulled tight against the drizzle. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. When Bradley stepped out, the teenagers watched him. Suit, gold watch, polished shoes, like he was from another planet. "Hey, man," one called. "You lost?" "I'm looking for someone," Bradley replied, not slowing. "His name's Jordan Miles." The kids exchanged looks, curious, guarded. Finally, one spoke. "Building C, top floor, if he's still here." Still here. Those two words made Bradley move faster. He climbed the narrow stairwell, each step creaking beneath his weight. The walls were chipped, faint graffiti scratched into corners. A television echoed through one of the apartment doors. A baby cried somewhere down the hall. At the top landing, apartment 3C sat in darkness. A folded eviction notice was taped to the door, edges curling from moisture. Bradley's heart dropped. He knocked, firm, urgent. At first, nothing. Then a faint shuffle. The click of a lock. The door cracked open only an inch. A tired brown eye appeared in the gap. "Mr. Thompson?" Jordan's voice was soft, startled. "What are you doing here?" Bradley exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "I've been looking everywhere for you." The door opened wider. Jordan stood barefoot, wearing a worn t-shirt and sweatpants, his skin still chilled from the rain. Behind him, the small apartment was dim. One lamp, second-hand furniture, boxes half-packed, as if someone was preparing to leave or expecting to be forced out soon. "You shouldn't be here," Jordan murmured. "This isn't the kind of neighborhood you pull up in wearing that." "I don't care," Bradley said plainly. "I needed to talk to you." Jordan stepped aside reluctantly. "Come in." Bradley walked into the apartment. It smelled faintly of coffee, damp clothes, and the citrus cleaner someone had used recently to scrub the floor. A young girl, maybe 8, peeked from behind the sofa, curly hair tied in mismatched bows. She blinked up at Bradley with the cautious bravery of a child who'd learned to read strangers fast. "This is my niece, Nia," Jordan said. "She's supposed to be asleep." Nia stepped forward, rubbing her eyes. "Uncle Jay, is that the man from the hospital?" Bradley knelt to her level, softening. "Yeah, I was visiting a little girl there." "You're Nia?" She nodded. "Are you going to take my uncle away?" Jordan stiffened. "Nia." Bradley felt the words lodge painfully in his chest. "No, sweetheart," he said gently. "No one is taking him anywhere. I'm here because he helped someone I love." Nia studied him, then stepped back, satisfied with the answer. Jordan exhaled, running a hand over his face. "I told her I was helping someone. She gets worried when I'm out late." "She's lucky to have you," Bradley said. Jordan gave a small, tired smile. "I'm the only one she has left." Silence settled between them, heavy but not hostile. Rain tapped softly against the window. Finally, Bradley spoke. "Mariah is awake." Jordan's eyes widened. "She made it? After that crash?" "She's alive because of you," Bradley said. "And she remembers you. She asked for you." Jordan looked down, emotion tightening his jaw. "I'm glad she's okay. She was hurt bad." "There's more," Bradley continued. "She's connected to Layla, to my daughter." Jordan lifted his gaze. "Connected how?" Bradley hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "She's her birth mother." Jordan froze. The room seemed to still around him. "You're serious?" he whispered. "I wish I wasn't," Bradley said. "But everything she told me aligns with what Layla's adoption agency recorded, and what Vanessa hid." Jordan stared at the floor, shaking his head. "Man, that little girl, she deserves better than secrets." "Yes," Bradley said quietly. "She does." Jordan swallowed, voice rough. "So what do you need from me?" Bradley stepped closer. "I need you to come back." Jordan absorbed the words in silence. They felt heavier than any request he'd been asked in years. "I don't belong in a place like that," he finally said. "You saw what happened. Your wife, she made it clear." "My wife," Bradley said slowly, "is not the one my daughter trusts. You are." Jordan considered that. Really considered it. His gaze drifted toward the boxes near the door, the eviction notice taped outside, the niece he protected, the worn-out home he had tried so hard to keep intact. He wasn't used to being asked to stay, or being needed. "Why me?" he murmured. Bradley's voice softened. "Because when my daughter was breaking, she reached for you. Because when a stranger was dying in the rain, you saved her. Because you didn't hesitate." He let the weight of that truth settle. "And because tonight, I learned what kind of man you are, and I want that man near my family." Jordan looked away, blinking hard. Naya stepped toward him, grasping his hand. "Uncle Jay, you should go. The little girl needs you." Jordan's breath trembled. Finally, he nodded. "Let me grab my jacket." As he reached for it, a knock suddenly rattled the apartment door. Sharp, impatient, nothing like Bradley's knock earlier. Jordan froze. Nia's grip tightened. Bradley felt a warning run through him like a chill. Jordan moved to the door, peeking through the peephole, then stiffened. "What is it?" Bradley asked. Jordan stepped back, voice low. "There's a man in a black sedan outside," he whispered. "Same one that's been parked on our street the last few nights." Bradley's blood turned cold. "It's the same man," Jordan said. "The one I saw near the hospital before the crash." Mariah's warning hit Bradley like thunder. Someone forced her off the road. And now that someone had found Jordan. He turned to Nia. "Stay back, sweetheart." Jordan inhaled deeply. The calm before a storm he'd tried to avoid his whole life. "Bradley," he murmured. "Whoever that is, he ain't here by accident." And on the other side of the door, a low voice spoke through the wood. "Jordan Miles, we need to talk." For a moment, no one moved. Even the leaky faucet in the kitchenette seemed to hold its breath. The hallway outside was silent, except for the faint hum of a flickering bulb. Jordan felt Naya's small fingers tighten around his hand. Bradley stepped instinctively closer, positioning himself just slightly in front of them both without even realizing he'd done it. Jordan swallowed once, steadying his breath. "Who is it?" A pause. Then the voice replied, colder this time. "Someone who needs answers. Open the door." Bradley shook his head sharply. "Don't." Jordan hesitated. Not because he wanted to open it, but because he'd been raised his whole life being told not to escalate, not to make things worse, not to appear threatening. He looked to Bradley, confused, torn. Then the door handle rattled, subtle, testing. Bradley reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone. "I'm calling the police." "No," Jordan whispered urgently. If he's tied to what happened to Mariah, we don't know how far this goes. Cops might scare him into leaving before we get anything. Bradley stared at him. Jordan, this man might be dangerous. I ain't letting someone dangerous near my niece, Jordan said, voice low but steady. But I'm also not letting him walk away without understanding why he's been following us. The handle rattled again, harder this time. Jordan stepped forward. Nia, go sit on the bed. Close the curtain. I don't want to leave you, she whispered. Bradley knelt, guiding her gently. You're helping us by staying safe. We'll handle this. Nia nodded reluctantly and slipped behind the curtain, hugging her pillow. Jordan took a slow breath, cracked the door open just an inch, chain still latched. A man stood there in a black coat, hat dripping rain onto the worn hallway carpet. His face was half-shadowed, but his eyes were visible. Restless, darting, scanning the hallway like someone constantly watching his back. You're a hard man to catch up with, he said. What do you want? Jordan asked. The man exhaled, annoyed. To talk somewhere that isn't a public hallway. That's not happening. The man's jaw tightened. Fine. Then listen. You were there when that woman crashed, Mariah Carter. People are asking questions. People who don't want answers found. Jordan stiffened. People like you? The man's shoulders tensed at the accusation, but he didn't answer directly. Let me inside. I don't want trouble. Bradley appeared behind Jordan, voice sharp. Then step away from the door. The man stared at Bradley, recognizing him almost instantly. The recognition sharpened his posture, his voice dropping even lower. Mr. Thompson, he said. I figured you'd be here sooner or later. Jordan's blood went cold. You know him? Bradley shook his head slowly. No, but he knows me. The man lifted both hands, palms outward. I'm not here to hurt anyone, but you're all involved in something bigger than you understand. If you keep digging, Bradley stepped forward. We're not digging, we're finding the truth. The man's expression hardened. Then you're both in danger. A long, electric silence filled the hallway. Finally, Jordan asked, Are you the one who ran Mariah off the road? The man's eyes flickered, a microsecond of guilt or regret, impossible to read. I'm not answering that, he said. Which to everyone in the room was an answer. Jordan's hands curled into fists against the doorframe. Why follow me? You picked her up. She spoke to you. She might have told you something. Bradley's jaw clenched. She didn't need to tell him anything. She told me. That broke the man's composure. He swayed back a step. What did she say? Bradley didn't hesitate. Enough to know she wasn't supposed to die tonight. The man's face froze, then darkened. I'm not your enemy, but your wife, Jordan slammed the door shut and double-latched it before the man could finish. He turned to Bradley, breath shaking. What did he just say? Bradley looked at him, eyes full of a grim truth he could barely process. He was about to say, Vanessa. Jordan ran a hand over his head. I know your wife don't like me, but why would she be tied up in something like this? Bradley didn't answer. Because he didn't know. Or maybe he did. And the pieces were falling together faster than he could stop them. Before either man could speak, someone pounded on the door again. Not the same controlled knock as before, but harder, angrier. Bradley reached for his phone. That's it. I'm calling the police. He's not leaving. But when he looked through the peephole, no one was there. Only the echo of footsteps fading down the stairwell. Jordan unlocked the chain and opened the door cautiously. The hallway was empty except for a new piece of paper taped to the opposite wall. Bradley stepped beside him. The paper read, "Stop asking questions." Jordan's heart dropped to his stomach. "This ain't random," he whispered. Bradley took the note, folding it into his pocket. "No, it's personal." He turned to Jordan. "Grab your things. You're coming with me." Jordan blinked. "What?" "It's not safe here," Bradley said firmly. "For you or Naya. You're not staying another night in this building." Jordan looked around his small apartment. Peeling paint, flickering lights, boxes half-packed, eviction notice crinkling in the breeze. He'd stayed in places like this his whole life. Places where danger knocked daily. Places where fear was part of the rent. But tonight, something shifted inside him. "Uncle Jay?" Naya peeked out, eyes wide. "Are we moving?" Jordan knelt, pulling her into a hug. "Yeah, sweetheart. Just for a little while." He stood and turned to Bradley. "We'll come, but I ain't running." Bradley nodded. "Good. Because I'm done running, too." Jordan grabbed his jacket and one small duffel bag, the kind a man keeps packed when life hasn't ever given him enough stability to unpack fully. As they stepped out into the rainy hallway, Bradley looked at him, voice low. "Jordan, when Layla wakes up tomorrow morning, she's going to need someone she trusts. Someone with a good heart." "And you think that's me?" Jordan asked quietly. "I know it is," Bradley said. Jordan didn't answer, not with words. He simply nodded and followed Bradley down the stairs, into the night, and toward a truth waiting to explode. Because the next sunrise would bring answers they weren't ready for. But one answer was already clear. They needed each other more than either man had realized. By the time Bradley and Jordan reached the hospital again, dawn was threatening the horizon. A soft blue-gray glow seeped between the buildings, turning the wet parking lot into a mirror. The rain had finally stopped, leaving behind a quiet that felt too fragile to trust. Bradley parked near the emergency entrance. He didn't say anything at first, just sat there, gripping the wheel, staring through the windshield as though expecting the night to rear up again and strike. Jordan watched him carefully. "You okay?" "No," Bradley admitted. "But I will be." Jordan nodded. He understood that kind of weight. When a man suddenly realized parts of his life were built on secrets he didn't choose. They stepped out together. Jordan held Nia's hand while she blinked sleepily, her curls flattened on one side from the car ride. Bradley led them through the sliding doors. A night nurse looked up, startled to see Bradley with company. "Sir, visitor hours aren't open yet." Bradley gave a tired smile. "I know, but my daughter's been asking for him." The way he said it, quiet, sincere, made the nurse soften immediately. "Room 314, she's awake." Jordan felt something in his chest twist. Layla was awake, and she'd been waiting. They walked down the hallway. Bradley paused outside the room. "I'll go in first," he said. "She's been through a lot." Jordan nodded. But when Bradley pushed open the door, something unexpected waited on the other side. Layla was sitting up in bed, pale but alert, her small hands clutching the stuffed rabbit Bradley had given her last Christmas. And across from her, pulling a chair nearer, was Vanessa. Her hair was slightly disheveled for the first time all night, makeup faintly smudged. She looked tired, almost human. but her eyes sharpened the moment she saw Jordan behind Bradley. "You brought him here?" she snapped. "Keep your voice down," Bradley said quietly. "She's awake." "I don't care if she's awake. This is inappropriate. We don't know this man's intentions." "Intentions?" Bradley stepped aside, gesturing toward Jordan. "His intentions saved your daughter's life." Layla's small voice broke through the tension. "Daddy, let him in." Vanessa's expression faltered, just for a second, as if she knew she'd lost the only audience that mattered. Bradley held the door. Jordan stepped inside slowly, unsure where to look, at Layla, who was watching him with teary eyes, or at Vanessa, who looked ready to drag him out by force. Layla lifted a trembling hand. "Jordan." That was all he needed. He crossed to her bedside, sinking into the chair where he'd sat earlier that night. "Hey, sweetheart, you gave us a scare." Her lip wobbled. "I thought you left." "I did," he admitted. "But your daddy found me." Layla glanced at Bradley, who gave her a warm, steady nod. Vanessa huffed and folded her arms. "This is ridiculous." Bradley turned to her. "No, Vanessa. What's ridiculous is that a stranger showed more care for our daughter in a few hours than you have in weeks." Vanessa's face reddened. "That's not fair." "What's not fair," Bradley continued, voice steady, "is that you tried to limit her treatment. What's not fair is that you hid her birth mother from both of us. What's not fair is that you've been lying to—" "Stop," she barked. "You don't understand the full story." "Then explain it," Bradley said. "Because so far, the only people telling the truth tonight were Jordan and Mariah." Vanessa's mouth opened, but no words came out. Not yet. Before she could gather herself, a soft knock sounded at the door. A doctor stepped in, Dr. Chalmers, the one treating Mariah. "Mr. Thompson," he said, "Mariah is awake again. She's stable. She's asking to see you." Vanessa stiffened. "Why is she asking to see him?" Dr. Chalmers glanced uneasily at her. "Because she has more to say." Bradley exhaled slowly. "I'll go." He looked at Jordan. "Stay with her." Jordan nodded. "Of course." Vanessa stepped forward. "Bradley, you can't. This woman—" "I'm done listening to you," he said gently. "Tonight, I listened to the people who nearly died, not the person who tried to erase them." Vanessa recoiled as though struck. Bradley walked out without another word. Jordan stayed where he was. Layla leaned against him, a soft weight he held carefully. For the first time since he'd arrived at the hospital, she was breathing calmly. Vanessa, however, was not. She paced the room once, twice, her eyes darting toward the hallway. Whatever she was holding back, it was cracking. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered toward Jordan, almost too quietly for him to hear. Jordan didn't answer. He didn't flinch. He simply kept one hand on Layla's back, steadying her breathing. Vanessa swallowed. "You don't know what you've stepped into." "No," Jordan said finally. "But I know what I saw, and I know what I won't let happen." Before Vanessa could reply, Bradley returned, faster than expected, breathless, eyes shining with something fierce and raw. "Jordan," he said, voice thick, "you need to come with me." Jordan stood cautiously. "Is something wrong?" Bradley shook his head. "No, something's right. Something you deserve to hear for yourself." Layla blinked. "Daddy, what happened?" Bradley smiled at her with wet eyes. "Sweetheart, The man sitting beside you saved more than your life. He looked at Jordan. He saved your mother's life, too. Layla gasped softly. Vanessa turned pale. Jordan froze where he stood. Bradley put a hand on Jordan's shoulder. Mariah wants to see you. She wants to thank the man who gave her the chance to meet her daughter again. For a moment, Jordan forgot how to breathe. Me? He whispered. She wants me? Yes, Bradley said, and you deserve to hear something else from her. Something important. The room was silent. Even Vanessa. Especially Vanessa. Bradley stepped aside, holding the door open. Come on, Jordan, he said. This is your moment. Jordan glanced at Naya, still safe on the bed, at Layla, smiling at him like he'd hung the moon, and at Vanessa, too stunned to speak. Then he followed Bradley into the hallway, each step carrying him toward a truth he never expected. He wasn't just part of their night. He was part of their lives now. And the world was finally ready to show him why. The hallway outside Mariah's room was quiet. Morning quiet. The kind filled with soft shoe steps and hushed voices. The kind where people breathed a little deeper after surviving the long, dark hours before dawn. Bradley walked ahead, glancing back every few steps to make sure Jordan was still there. Jordan was there, but he felt miles away. His heartbeat thudded in his ears. His palms were damp. Every instinct told him to turn back, not because he feared danger, but because he feared the weight of what waited behind that hospital door. He had never been anyone's miracle, never been the center of anyone's gratitude, never been called for, searched for, trusted this deeply by people who barely knew him. But Layla needed him. Mariah asked for him. Bradley believed in him. For the first time in a long time, that was enough to make him keep walking. Bradley gently pushed the door open. Mariah lay propped up on her pillows, a warm patch of morning light spilling across her blanket. Her breathing mask hung loosely at her neck now. Her bruises hadn't begun to fade yet, but her eyes, they were alive, sharp, filled with something that looked almost like awe when she saw Jordan enter. "You came," she whispered, voice trembling. Jordan swallowed hard. "I wasn't sure if I should." Bradley stepped back, giving them space. Mariah motioned Jordan closer with shaky fingers. "You should," she murmured. "Because I owe you my life. Twice." Jordan shook his head. "I just did what anyone would—" "No," she interrupted softly. "Not anyone. Most people don't run toward fire. Most people don't run toward pain. Most people film it, or turn away. But you carried me out with your bare hands." Her voice broke, emotion pressing on every word. "And because you did, I woke up and realized I still had a chance to see my daughter." Jordan blinked. "You didn't even know me." Mariah smiled, a fragile, grateful smile. "But I knew your heart in those 10 seconds you held me. Some people spend years showing their character. You showed yours in the rain, without a second thought." Jordan looked down, his breath shaky. He wasn't used to praise that felt like truth. Then Mariah reached under her pillow and pulled out that worn, water-stained photo, the one Bradley had seen earlier. She held it carefully, as though it were made of glass. "This picture," she whispered, "was all I carried with me. When I was sick, when I was broke, when I kept falling off the path and crawling back on it. I told myself, if I could just get clean, just stay alive long enough, I'd find her, even if all I ever got to do was see her from a distance." Jordan's throat tightened. Bradley turned away for a moment, wiping his eyes. Mariah extended the photo toward Jordan. She'll want you to have a copy of this someday, because you're part of her story now. Jordan lifted his gaze, stunned. Me? Yes, she said, because you saved her mother, and because Layla chose you before she even knew your name. A soft knock sounded. A nurse peeked in. Mr. Thompson, they're ready for you in the family room. Bradley nodded. He turned to Jordan. Come with me. There's something else you need to hear. But Mariah called after them softly. Bradley, be gentle with her. With Vanessa. Bradley froze. Mariah continued, voice steady despite tremors. She didn't try to hurt me. She tried to protect the life she built. It wasn't right, but it came from fear, not hate. Bradley exhaled, slow and conflicted. I'll try. Jordan gave Mariah one last nod, one filled with respect. I'll come back later. She smiled. I'll be waiting. Bradley led Jordan out and down the hall to the small family consultation room. Inside, coffee sat untouched on the table. Papers were stacked neatly beside a hospital counselor. And, unexpectedly, Vanessa was there too. She stood when they entered, eyes red-rimmed, shoulders pulled tight like someone bracing for impact. She looked smaller than she had all night. Not fragile, but stripped down, emptied of defenses. Bradley, she whispered, please, let me explain. Bradley's jaw flexed. We'll get to that. The counselor cleared her throat gently. First, Mr. Thompson, the social worker asked me to share something with you. And with Mr. Miles. Jordan blinked. Me? She nodded. It concerns the accident investigation. The counselor slid a report toward Bradley. He didn't touch it. He only stared at her, waiting. The driver of the black sedan, she said softly, has been identified. Vanessa inhaled sharply. The counselor looked between them carefully. He was a private investigator hired 6 months ago by Mrs. Vanessa Thompson. The room fell silent. Jordan's pulse roared in his ears. Bradley felt the air leave his lungs. Vanessa's knees buckled, and she collapsed into her chair. It wasn't supposed to happen like that, she whispered, shaking. I told him to keep distance, to watch, to make sure that woman didn't come near Layla. I never told him to run her off the road. Tears spilled down her face. I just couldn't lose my daughter. Bradley stared at her, hurt, disbelief, and pity swirling in his expression. You almost did, he said quietly, because secrets have a cost. Vanessa covered her face and sobbed. Jordan stepped back, uncomfortable being present for what felt like the breaking of a family. But then Bradley turned toward him. Stay, he said. This isn't just about us. The counselor continued gently. Mr. Miles, the hospital has also reviewed the security footage from the ER. You were the only person who acted when Mariah needed help. You're part of this now, legally and emotionally. We want to make sure you're protected too. Jordan blinked. Protected? I'm just a delivery driver. A delivery driver who saved 2 lives, she replied, and who may need support if this situation escalates. Bradley inhaled deeply, then spoke with clarity he hadn't possessed before now. Jordan, when all this is over, I want to help you, really help you, with housing, with Nia's schooling, with whatever you need. Jordan shook his head. I don't want charity. This isn't charity, Bradley said firmly. It's compensation for what you risked, and gratitude for what you've given. He paused. And it's family. Jordan froze. Family. A word too big to hold, too beautiful to trust. The counselor stepped out to give them privacy. Vanessa remained silent, crumbling in her chair. Bradley placed a hand on Jordan's shoulder. There's one more person who wants to see you, he said. Together they returned to Layla's room. The moment Jordan stepped in, Layla's face lit up, weak but glowing with genuine joy. Uncle Jordan, she whispered. The title hit him like sunlight. He sat beside her. She leaned into him as though she'd known him forever. Bradley watched the scene unfold. His daughter safe, her birth mother alive, and this quiet, humble man at the center of both miracles. And he finally understood what the night had been trying to show him. Kindness is not small. Goodness is not forgotten. And sometimes family is chosen, not inherited. He cleared his throat, voice trembling. Jordan, I'd like to make something official. For Layla. For Nia. For all of us. Jordan looked at him, confused. Bradley smiled warmly. How would you feel about becoming part of our family? Not just in name, but in life. A permanent role. A place with us, with her. Layla squeezed Jordan's hand. Mariah appeared at the doorway, smiling through tears, and Jordan, who'd lived years believing he mattered to no one, felt something inside him finally break open. A home, a family, a future, all built not by blood, but by kindness. And for the first time in his life he realized he belonged. He nodded, voice cracking. I'd like that, more than anything. And as the sun rose outside the hospital window, the room filled with something warmer than morning light. Hope, healing, family. A family reborn from the simple courage of a good man who chose to do what was right, even when no one was watching. If this story touched your heart, drop a simple 1 in the comments. Just one number to let us know you felt something. And if you want more stories of kindness, courage, and life-changing twists, make sure to subscribe and stay with us. The next story might be the one you'll never forget.